History is not the simple story you were taught. A corroded bronze gear from a shipwreck, a clay jar that generates electricity, a sword forged with nanotechnology. These are not science fiction. They are real discoveries that force historians to completely rethink early technology. By the end of this exploration, you will see the ancient world through new eyes, understanding it as a place of profound and forgotten genius. How did a 2,000-year-old device predict cosmic events with clockwork precision? And why was a medieval manuscript written in a code that still defies the world's best cryptographers? Each answer unravels part of a larger, more mysterious truth. What does it mean for our own future if the past was this advanced? That comfortable story of steady advancement is a powerful one. It suggests a clear, upward path from primitive beginnings to our current sophistication, a ladder we all climbed together. For a long time, this was the accepted lens through which we viewed every ancient tool, every text, every ruin. The narrative was not just about progress, it was about who led that progress, often centering a specific geographical and cultural viewpoint as the engine of human ingenuity. This framework made the world's history seem orderly, predictable, and complete. But what happens when you find a piece that does not fit the puzzle, or worse, seems to belong to a completely different picture? The first cracks in this world, you did not come from a single dramatic find, but from a quiet accumulation of anomalies, a pottery shard with a glaze chemistry unknown to its era, an architectural alignment too precise for its supposed tools, a medicinal recipe describing a process that should not have been understood for another 1,000 years. These were the whispers that something was profoundly wrong with the timeline. They forced a crucial realization: technology is not just the physical machines we can hold. It is the abstract knowledge of mathematics that plots a city's grid, the chemical understanding that tempers a metal or creates a pigment, the astronomical insight that charts the seasons. When we broaden our definition, the ancient world suddenly becomes a far more intriguing and mysterious place. This is the essential background, the old map we must set aside, to truly comprehend the scale of the discoveries that were about to rewrite the story. These whispers of anomaly coalesce into a single, powerful question that haunts modern archaeology. What does primitive even mean? The word itself carries an assumption, a quiet judgment that older societies possessed simpler, less effective tools and ideas. Yet the artifacts we are uncovering tell a different story entirely. They are not just older versions of the hammer or the wheel. They are objects of startling sophistication that seem to belong to a different timeline altogether. This category has a name among researchers: out-of-place artifacts, often shortened to OOP arts. The term does not imply alien intervention or magic, but rather a stark, factual observation. Here is an object whose material, design, or implied knowledge does not align with the established historical narrative for its time and place. It is a chronological misfit, a piece of technology that appears to have arrived too early. Think of it not as a mystery box, but as a key. Each one unlocks a door in our understanding, forcing us to ask, how did this happen? The immediate assumption might be that our dating is wrong, and sometimes that is the case. But when multiple lines of evidence confirm an artifact's age, the artifact itself becomes evidence against our own assumptions. It compels historians to consider models of development we often overlook. Perhaps knowledge was gained and then tragically lost, erased by the slow fade of oral tradition or the sudden collapse of a civilization. Maybe the same complex problem, like predicting eclipses or creating durable steel, was solved independently by different cultures separated by continents, a testament to the universal spark of human ingenuity. Or it suggests webs of cultural exchange that were far more extensive and ancient than our written records show, hinting at forgotten voyages and shared ideas across what we thought were impassable distances. The core challenge these objects present is to our linear view of progress. They argue convincingly that older does not automatically mean simpler. A 2,000-year-old analog computer, as we will see, can be exponentially more complex in its conception than a tool made 500 years ago. This isn't about finding a better spearhead. It's about finding a blueprint for a philosophy of engineering we thought was centuries away from being conceived. Recognizing this forces a profound shift from looking down a timeline of incremental improvement to looking out across a vast and varied landscape of human genius, where peaks of technological achievement could rise, be forgotten, and rise again in completely different forms. This redefinition is the essential first step, the mental tool we need to properly examine the incredible discoveries that follow. The first artifact to truly embody this challenge was found not in a grand tomb, but at the bottom of the sea. In the year 1900, sponge divers working near the tiny Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman cargo ship. Among the shattered statues and ceramic jars, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood, so encrusted and fragile it seemed like meaningless debris. It was set aside for years, a curious footnote to a much larger treasure. But then someone looked closer. What they saw inside that calcified mass would ignite a century of debate and force a complete rewrite of technological history. This was the Antikythera Mechanism. Through painstaking analysis, researchers determined it was created around 100 years before the Common Era. At first glance, the surviving fragments reveal a series of intricate, interlocking bronze gears, some with fine teeth cut with astonishing precision. But this was no simple ornament. Using advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography, scientists have been able to peer inside and digitally reconstruct the device's incredible inner workings. They discovered it was a complex mechanical computer operated by a hand crank. Its dials and pointers could track the cycles of the moon, predict the positions of the sun and 5 known planets, and even forecast solar and lunar eclipses. It modeled the irregular motion of the moon so accurately that it accounted for a subtle wobble in its orbit, a phenomenon we now call lunar anomaly. This was not just a calendar, it was a dynamic, moving model of the universe as the Greeks understood it, a portable planetarium of breathtaking complexity. To find something of this nature in the ancient world is akin to discovering a modern smartphone in a Victorian desk drawer. The implications are staggering. For generations, we celebrated the ancient Greeks as masters of philosophy, theater, and abstract geometry, thinkers who pondered the heavens but lacked the mechanical inclination to build models of them. The Antikythera Mechanism shatters that simplistic view completely. It proves that a level of precise, miniaturized gearwork and profound astronomical understanding existed in the 2nd or 1st century before the Common Era, a technological peak that would not be matched until the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. This single device forces us to confront a haunting possibility. How much knowledge was concentrated in that workshop, on that island, aboard that one ill-fated ship? And if this object was being transported, who was it for, and what other wonders were being crafted in the same tradition that we have simply never found? The Antikythera Mechanism is no longer an anomaly, it is a benchmark. It stands as permanent physical proof that our ancestors were not just thinkers, but consummate engineers, capable of turning their deepest understanding of the cosmos into a machine of brass and genius. The genius of the Antikythera Mechanism lay in its moving parts, a symphony of bronze gears translating cosmic order into tangible motion. Yet another discovery from the ancient world suggests they may have understood a force with no moving parts at all, a silent, invisible power we now call electricity. In the outskirts of modern Baghdad, during excavations in the 1930s, workers uncovered a collection of very simple-looking clay jars. They were not much larger than a person's hand, each sealed with a plug of asphalt. Inside, archaeologists found a rolled copper sheet forming a cylinder, and within that, an iron rod. To the untrained eye, it was just curious scrap metal and pottery. But to a modern scientist, the arrangement was unmistakable. This was the basic anatomy of a battery, dated to the Parthian or Sasanian period, between roughly 250 years before the Common Era and 650 years after. These objects, now called the Baghdad batteries, present a quiet, profound mystery. If you were to fill such a jar with an acidic electrolyte, something as common as vinegar or citrus juice, a chemical reaction would occur between the two different metals. Electrons would flow from the iron rod to the copper cylinder, generating a small but measurable electric current, around 1 volt. That is not enough to power a light, but it is a consistent, usable trickle of electricity. The immediate and obvious question is, what was it for? The purpose is not written on the jars, and no wires or obvious electrical devices were found with them, leaving their application open to intense debate. Some researchers propose a medical use, suggesting the gentle tingling sensation could have been employed in therapeutic practices, a form of early electrotherapy. Others point to a spiritual or ritual purpose, where the mysterious, unseen force might have been used to create a sense of awe or connection during ceremonies. The most tantalizing theory, however, involves electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat one metal with a thin layer of another, like gold or silver. There are artifacts from the same region and period, particularly small statues and jewelry, that show signs of very fine, microscopically thin gilding. Conventional methods like mercury gilding are possible, but the presence of these simple galvanic cells raises a compelling alternative. A craftsman could have connected several of these jars in series to increase the voltage, immersed an object in a gold salt solution, and used the current to bond the precious metal to the surface with remarkable control. Whether this was their true use may never be proven conclusively, but the existence of the objects themselves is the real point of revolution. For centuries, the official history of electricity credited Alessandro Volta with creating the first true battery in the year 1800. The Baghdad jars force us to confront a possibility that is both humbling and exhilarating. They suggest that the fundamental principle of the battery, the conversion of chemical energy into electrical energy, was not a sudden invention of the modern age but a rediscovery. Someone over 1500 years earlier had stumbled upon or systematically developed a working knowledge of electrochemistry. This is not about ancient people having power grids or light bulbs. It is about a different kind of sophistication, a practical, hands-on experimentation with natural forces. It hints at a lineage of technical curiosity that operated outside our written histories, in workshops and temples where knowledge was passed down through practice, not parchment. The Baghdad battery, in its unassuming clay form, challenges a core pillar of our technological timeline. It whispers that the spark of discovery can be struck in any era, and that our map of invention is still missing entire continents of forgotten genius. The silent power of a clay jar battery hints at a chemistry of subtle forces, but the next discovery speaks of a far more visceral mastery over matter. It is the story of a blade, a weapon so perfect in its function that it became the stuff of legend across continents. These were the swords of Damascus, renowned not just for their beauty, with surfaces that shimmered like flowing water or scattered starfields, but for a terrifying performance on the battlefield. Historical accounts describe them as being flexible enough to bend from hilt to tip and spring back true, yet so sharp and resilient they could cleave through lesser blades or even a floating silk scarf with a single stroke. Their secret was not in magic, but in a material so advanced that modern science would spend centuries trying to unlock its formula. The steel itself, known as Wootz steel, originated in ancient India. It was produced in small, ingot-like cakes with a characteristic pattern, which were then traded westward to the forges of Syria. There, master smiths performed their transformative art. They would heat, hammer, fold, and crucially, control the cooling of the metal in a specific, guarded process. The result was a microstructure that gave the steel its legendary properties. For generations, the full secret of this process faded, lost by the 18th century, leaving behind only the peerless blades and frustrated modern metallurgists who could not duplicate their quality. The true breakthrough in understanding came not from historical texts, but from the electron microscope. When scientists examined slivers of authentic Damascus steel at a microscopic level, they made a staggering discovery. Embedded within the steel matrix were carbon nanotubes, incredibly strong, microscopic cylinders of carbon, alongside nanowires of cementite, a hard iron-carbon compound. This was not a random accident. This was a sophisticated, nanoscale engineering achieved through empirical, hands-on mastery. The ancient smiths, through precise control of temperature, the source ores trace impurities like vanadium, and the painstaking cycle of heating and forging, were unconsciously creating and aligning these nanostructures. The nanotubes provided incredible tensile strength, allowing the blade to flex without breaking, while the hard cementite pattern gave it a self-sharpening, serrated edge at a microscopic level. This explains the legendary sharpness and durability they had achieved through generations of perfected craft, a feat of materials science that we can only properly analyze and name with our most advanced 21st century technology. This forces a dramatic re-evaluation of what we mean by medieval or ancient technology. It was not primitive, it was a different path to sophistication, one built on acute observation, relentless experimentation, and a transfer of tacit knowledge from master to apprentice that was as precise as any laboratory manual. The Damascus sword is not merely a sharp piece of metal. It is a testament to the fact that human ingenuity can arrive at profound scientific truths through the rhythm of the hammer and the glow of the forge, long before the underlying theory is ever put into words. While Damascus steel reveals a mastery of matter at the microscopic level, another artifact from a similar era presents a puzzle not of metal but of meaning. Locked away in a vault at Yale University is a book that resists understanding with a stubborn, elegant defiance. Known as the Voynich Manuscript, this illustrated codex was penned on vellum in the early 15th century, a time when the printing press was still decades away. Its physical form is unremarkable, a handcrafted volume of over 200 pages, but open it and you enter a world of profound and beautiful confusion. Every single page is filled from edge to edge with an unknown script, a flowing text of strange, graceful characters that form no words recognized in any human language. This text is not random scribbles, it displays a complex statistical structure with patterns of letter frequency and word repetition that mirror those of a genuine, organized language. This internal consistency is the first major clue that this is not a medieval doodle or an elaborate forgery, but a deliberately and skillfully encoded work. The text is accompanied by bewildering illustrations that deepen the mystery. There are page after page of lush, detailed botanical drawings depicting plants with bulbous roots, spiraling leaves, and fantastical blossoms that do not correspond to any known species on Earth. Other sections feature intricate astronomical charts with unfamiliar constellations, circular diagrams of celestial bodies connected by tubes and channels, and biological sections showing what appear to be tiny, nude female figures bathing in or connected to a system of green, fluid-filled vessels. The technology of the Voynich manuscript is not one of gears or chemistry, but of cryptography and information. It represents a system of knowledge organization and secret keeping of staggering ambition. Someone or some group went to immense effort to record information in a way that was designed to be accessible only to initiates. This challenges the common perception of medieval intellectual pursuits as being solely concerned with theology or classical scholarship. It implies the existence of a parallel, perhaps esoteric, tradition of inquiry into the natural world, one that felt the need to protect its findings behind an unbreakable linguistic lock. For over a century, the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and computer scientists have attacked the manuscript's code, employing the same techniques that cracked military ciphers during global conflicts. Yet the Voynich manuscript has yielded nothing. Not a single word has been reliably translated. This enduring resistance is perhaps its most revolutionary quality. In an age where we assume any code can be broken with enough computing power, this 600-year-old book stands as a quiet, humbling monument to the power of a lost cognitive key. It forces us to consider that entire systems of thought, complete ways of categorizing plants, stars, and perhaps even human biology, could have been developed and then vanished, leaving behind only this gorgeous, impenetrable ghost. The manuscript does not just ask what it says, it asks a far more unsettling question. What other entire libraries of thought, other complete technologies of the mind, have been lost to time, leaving not even a cryptic manuscript behind to hint at what we are missing? While a manuscript locks away its secrets in symbols, other ancient builders chose to communicate in a language of pure, silent geometry. Scattered across the river deltas and jungles of southern Costa, Rica lie hundreds of enigmatic stone spheres. Crafted by the Diquiz culture between roughly 300 and 1500 years after the Common Era, these objects are disarmingly simple in concept, yet their execution defies easy explanation. They are quite simply near-perfect spheres carved from hard granite. Some are small enough to hold in your hands, while others are monumental, over 2 meters in diameter and weighing many tons. It is not their existence that is so revolutionary, but their precision. In a world without laser calipers or computer modeling, artisans achieved a spherical shape of such accuracy that modern engineers marvel at the consistency. Even more intriguing is the fact that within specific groups, the spheres are often found in sizes that correspond to one another, suggesting a deliberate, standardized system of measurement. The method of their creation is a masterclass in lost technology. Using only other stones as tools, likely hammerstones made of an even harder material, workers would have painstakingly pecked and ground away at a massive granite boulder. This process requires not just immense patience, but a profound, intuitive grasp of three-dimensional geometry. The craftsman had to constantly assess curvature from every angle, removing material evenly to guide the rock toward a perfect form it naturally resisted. This was stoneworking elevated to an art of spatial reasoning, but shaping the spheres was only the first impossible task. Then came the movement. How did a society without the wheel, without draft animals, transport these multi-ton granite balls from their quarries, through dense jungle and across rivers, to their final resting places? The likely answer involves a combination of ingenious leverage, wooden rollers, and vast communal effort, a logistical feat that speaks to a highly organized and motivated society. Finally, there is the puzzle of their arrangement. Many spheres were found in alignments, grouped in lines, triangles, or curves. While some were undoubtedly moved by later agricultural activity, certain patterns suggest intentional placement. Researchers propose they could have functioned as astronomical markers, their alignments pointing to solstice sunrises or significant stars, creating a calendar etched into the landscape. Others see them as symbols of authority or territory, markers of chiefly power or sacred spaces. Their true purpose may be a blend of the social, celestial, and spiritual. What makes the spheres so fundamentally challenging to our historical narrative is their distinct technological focus. In the same era, old-world civilizations were building upward, creating pyramids and temples that reached for the heavens. The Dikwis culture, in striking contrast, invested its collective genius into perfection of form. They pursued an ideal of geometry made tangible, a testament to a different kind of monumental thinking. This was not about scale or height, but about precision, balance, and the philosophical statement of a flawless sphere emerging from a rough, chaotic stone. Their achievement forces us to expand our definition of a monument. A grand temple shouts its presence, but a perfect sphere, resting silently in the earth, speaks in a whisper of a different order of intelligence, one dedicated to mastering form, movement, and meaning in a way that still resonates across the centuries. The silent perfection of a stone sphere speaks to a mastery of form, but the next discovery reveals a mastery over time itself. In the heart of modern Delhi stands a testament to ancient metallurgy that has defied the very process of decay. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, erected roughly 1600 years ago, is not merely an old object, it is a continuing event. For over 1.5 millennia, this 7-meter-tall column of wrought iron has stood completely exposed to sun, rain, and the humid Indian climate, yet it shows almost no signs of the rust that should have consumed it centuries ago. This is not a case of a sheltered artifact, it is a public monument in a bustling city, and its pristine condition is a quiet, daily rebuke to our assumptions about the limits of ancient materials science. The secret lies not in a magical coating, but in the very recipe of the iron itself. Modern analysis has revealed that the craftsmen who forged this pillar used an iron ore with an unusually high phosphorus content and a very low sulfur content. This was not a purified, modern industrial metal, but a specific, perhaps locally sourced material. When this high phosphorus iron is exposed to the atmosphere, it does not form the flaky, destructive red oxide we know as rust. Instead, it reacts to create an astonishingly thin, stable, and protective layer on its surface called mesawite. This film, only microns thick, acts as a perfect shield. It adheres tightly to the metal beneath, preventing oxygen and moisture from penetrating further and eating away at the pillar's core. It is a process modern engineers call passive film formation, a principle we use today in stainless steels and anodized metals. The revolutionary insight here is that the ancient Indian ironsmiths achieved this not through a later applied treatment, but through the intrinsic chemistry of their raw material. They either knowingly selected this specific ore for its durable properties, or through generations of empirical trial and error, they discovered that iron from a certain source produced monuments that stood the test of time. This knowledge, however, was tragically ephemeral. Later generations of metalworkers, perhaps using different ores or refining processes that removed phosphorus, lost the formula. The pillar thus stands as a singular peak, a technology that reached a height and then was forgotten. Today, scientists study its surface not as a historical curiosity, but as a source of genuine inspiration for modern corrosion resistance. It teaches us that sometimes the most advanced solution is not about adding complexity, but about understanding the innate properties of your materials on a profound level. The pillar is more than a relic, it is a still-functioning piece of ancient engineering, a quiet dialogue between the ingenuity of the 5th century and the environmental challenges of the 21st, proving that the most enduring technology is often the one that learns to work in harmony with the elements rather than simply fighting against them. While the iron pillar mastered the slow patience of time, another ancient technology harnessed the immediate and terrifying power of fire. For the sailors of the Byzantine Empire defending the great city of Constantinople, that power had a name: Greek fire. From the 7th century onward, this weapon became the stuff of nightmares for any fleet that dared approach the city's walls. Historical accounts describe a liquid flame that could be projected from tubes mounted on the prows of Byzantine warships. Once it struck, the horror began. This was no ordinary fire. It clung tenaciously to whatever it touched: wood, sails, and most unnervingly, the surface of the water itself. Attempts to douse it with water only seemed to make it burn more fiercely, creating a spreading inferno that could consume an entire vessel in minutes. In an age of wooden ships and close-quarter naval combat, Greek fire was the ultimate psychological and tactical weapon, a decisive advantage that helped preserve the empire for centuries. The true revolution of Greek fire was not merely its destructive power, but the profound chemical and engineering knowledge required to create and control it. Its exact formula was the most closely guarded state secret of the medieval world, known only to a select few, possibly even within a single family. This secrecy was so effective that the full recipe was lost to history, though modern analysis of contemporary descriptions points to a likely petroleum-based mixture, perhaps similar to crude naphtha combined with other compounds. One leading theory suggests the addition of quicklime, which reacts violently with water, releasing intense heat and potentially igniting the fuel on contact with the sea. Other proposals include resins or saltpeter to alter the burning properties. What is clear is that this was not a simple cocktail of flammable liquids. It was a precisely engineered chemical weapon designed for specific tactical effects: adhesion, water resistance, and extreme heat. Its deployment required equally sophisticated technology. The Byzantines did not simply hurl parts of the substance. They used a complex apparatus often described as a bronze siphon or pump, likely pressurized with a force like a bellows, which allowed operators to project a continuous, directed stream of liquid fire over a significant distance. This combination of advanced chemistry and mechanical engineering represents a peak of applied military science that would not be seen again for hundreds of years. To call it an ancient weapon of mass destruction is not an exaggeration. It fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Mediterranean. The legacy of Greek fire forces us to confront a difficult facet of technological progress. The same human drive for understanding that created the Antikythera Mechanism or the corrosion-resistant pillar could also be channeled with equal ingenuity into tools of profound devastation. It underscores that technological advancement is never inherently moral. Its impact is defined entirely by the hands that wield it. The lost formula of Greek fire stands as a permanent question mark, a reminder that some discoveries are so powerful they can be invented, used to shape history, and then vanish completely, leaving behind only echoes of their terrifying roar across the water. The terrifying power of Greek fire was a weapon of intimate, searing proximity. But on the opposite side of the world, another ancient culture was engaged in a project of breathtaking scale, one meant to be seen from a distance we might consider divine. Etched into the sun-baked pampas of southern Peru, the Nazca lines are a gallery of giants, created by the Nazca culture between roughly 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after. These are not small carvings. They are geoglyphs, massive designs made by removing the dark, iron oxide-coated surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored earth beneath. From the ground, they appear as faint, meandering pathways, a confusing network of trenches. But ascend to the sky, and the true vision reveals itself. Stretching across hundreds of square kilometers are perfectly straight lines that run for miles, converging at distant points on the horizon. Alongside them are immense figures: a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider, a monkey with a spiraling tail, a killer whale. and geometric shapes like trapezoids and triangles so vast they could encompass several football fields. This is the core of their mystery and their technological marvel. The creators of these lines never saw their work from above. They had no balloons, no aircraft, no drones. Their canvas was the desert floor, and their perspective was forever grounded. So how did they achieve such staggering precision over distances that can span kilometers? The technology here was not one of machines, but of organization and intellectual mastery. It was a triumph of applied mathematics and surveying. Researchers believe the Nazca people used a system of simple, yet brilliantly effective, tools and techniques. They likely established a central axis line using aligned posts or markers. From this baseline, they could use ropes of known lengths, stakes, and basic geometric principles to plot out angles and curves. To scale up a design, they may have created a small model on a grid system, then translated that grid onto the desert floor at a massively enlarged scale, a technique still used by artists today. The key was their profound understanding of proportion and their ability to maintain alignment across vast, uneven terrain using nothing but line of sight and coordinated labor. This implies a society with not just artisans, but with planners, mathematicians, and surveyors who could direct large groups of people in a unified, patient endeavor. The purpose of these immense drawings continues to spark debate. Some alignments correspond with the position of the sun during solstices, suggesting an astronomical calendar etched into the landscape. Others propose they were ritual pathways, walked during ceremonies to invoke the deities or natural forces represented by the animal figures, perhaps related to water, the most precious resource in the arid desert. What the Nazca lines fundamentally challenge is our modern bias that large-scale engineering requires complex machinery. Here, the most advanced technology was the human mind, capable of holding a complex geometric image, breaking it down into executable steps, and directing its flawless execution across a scale that seems superhuman. They transformed the entire plateau into a communal blueprint, proving that the most sophisticated tool is often a shared idea, perfectly planned and patiently followed. The lines are not a message to us, but a demonstration of what a coordinated society, armed only with simple tools and profound knowledge, can inscribe upon the very face of the earth. The precision of the Nazca lines was a public declaration, a giant signature on the landscape meant to be seen by the gods or the passage of the sun. But sometimes a discovery is made that is so small, so bizarrely out of place, that it feels like a private joke from the universe, one that sparks not awe but profound and lasting controversy. In the winter of 1961, 3 men were searching for geodes near the town of Olancha, California, in the Coso Mountains. Inside one promising-looking stone nodule, they found something that defied every logical explanation. When they cut it open, they did not find the expected crystal cavity. Instead, they saw what appeared to be a mechanical device. At its core was a cylinder of bright metal, surrounded by a ceramic ring, and encased in a hexagonal sheath of corroded material. To anyone with even a passing familiarity with 20th century machinery, it looked unmistakably like a spark plug. The mystery deepened exponentially when the object was sent for analysis. A geologist examining the thick, hard concretion layer surrounding the device estimated its age at a staggering 500,000 years. The headlines practically wrote themselves. A modern spark plug encased in stone 500,000 years old. If true, this would be the ultimate out-of-place artifact, evidence of advanced machinery in an era when early humans were just beginning to use simple stone tools. It suggested a timeline so fractured it bordered on science fiction. The Coso artifact, as it became known, quickly became a focal point for those challenging mainstream history. Yet for the scientific community, it served as a critical case study in a different kind of technology, the technology of interpretation itself. the real investigation began not with assumptions, but with skepticism. Researchers asked different questions. Could a concretion, that hard mineral shell, form much more quickly under certain conditions? The answer was yes, especially around a metal object in a mineral-rich environment. Then, what exactly was the object? Detailed X-rays and examinations by independent researchers, including a professional spark plug collector, provided the likely answer. The internal structure closely matched a champion spark plug from the early 1920s. The hexagonal sheath was not some unknown alloy, but the corroded remains of its steel shell. The most plausible explanation is a simple one. A spark plug from a 1920s-era vehicle or piece of mining equipment was lost or discarded in the desert. Over decades, not millennia, mineral-laden water percolated around it, depositing layers of hardpan and clay that cemented into a convincing-looking geode. The 500,000-year date was a misinterpretation based on the concretion's appearance, not a direct dating of the artifact itself. This story, however, is not a failure. It is a masterclass in the scientific method confronting a tantalizing mystery. The Coso artifact controversy highlights the intense, almost gravitational pull that these anomalous objects have on our imagination. We desperately want the past to be more mysterious, more advanced than we thought, but it also underscores the non-negotiable importance of context and rigorous analysis. The true technological challenge for historians is not just digging things up, it is building an unassailable chain of evidence around them. It is the painstaking work of distinguishing a world-changing revelation from a simple case of modern contamination. This artifact reminds us that the line between rewriting history and telling a tall tale is often drawn with the careful, patient tools of chemistry, geology, and humble skepticism. The greatest discoveries force us to rethink everything, but they must first survive the gauntlet of our own critical thinking. The line between an ancient toy and a blueprint for flight can be surprisingly thin. In a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt, dating to around 200 years before the Common Era, archaeologists found a small, elegant object carved from sycamore wood. It was catalogued as a bird model, a common funerary offering, and for decades it was displayed as just that, a beautifully stylized falcon with a graceful beak and a stylized eye. But if you look at it from a different angle, something extraordinary happens. The object, now known as the Saqqara bird, does not look like a bird in flight. Its wings are not flapping or spread for soaring. They are straight, rigid, and perfectly level. They are also curiously thick in cross-section, with a distinct, rounded shape on the top and a flatter underside. The tail, instead of being fanned or tapered, stands upright like a modern aircraft's vertical stabilizer. To a contemporary eye, the silhouette is unmistakable. It looks exactly like a model glider. This simple observation ignited a debate that cuts to the heart of how we interpret ancient ingenuity. The mainstream Egyptological view is understandably cautious. It is a bird, they argue, a symbolic representation meant for the afterlife, its design influenced by artistic convention and the limitations of wood carving. Yet a small group of researchers and aeronautical engineers could not ignore the shape. They saw not just art but applied physics. When they subjected replicas of the Saqqara bird to wind tunnel tests, the results were startling. The wing shape, that rounded top and flat bottom, is a classic airfoil design. It generates lift, the very force that allows airplanes to fly. The upright tail, they argued, could function as a rudder, providing directional stability. One aerodynamics expert even claimed that with the addition of a small horizontal stabilizer, which could have been lost, the model would be a highly stable glider, capable of flying a considerable distance if launched by hand. Whether this was intentional is the true mystery. Did an ancient Egyptian artisan, through countless hours of observing birds in flight, perhaps hawks riding thermal currents with their wings held stiff, intuitively carve a shape that accidentally captured the principle of lift? Or was this a deliberate experiment, a toy crafted by a curious mind that understood, on a practical level, how to make an object sail through the air? We have no papyrus diagrams of aerodynamic theory, no records of trial and error with wooden models. What we have is the object itself, a silent, three-dimensional question. It forces us to consider that the path to understanding flight may have begun not with Leonardo da Vinci's sketches centuries later, but in a humble workshop along the Nile, where a craftsman's keen eye and skilled hands converge to create something that feels, against all odds, modern. The Saqqara bird may never be proven as a prototype, but its lasting power is in the possibility it represents, that the seeds of a world-changing technology can lie dormant for millennia in the form of a child's plaything or a tomb offering, waiting for a future generation to look at an ancient shape and finally see the future it hinted at all along. That wooden bird hints at a world of lost knowledge, but what if an entire continent had been mapped and then forgotten? In the year 1513, an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis put the finishing touches on a world map. He noted in its margins that he had compiled it from many older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. For centuries, his work was just another historical curiosity, until a fragment of it was rediscovered in the 1920s. When modern scholars laid their eyes on it, they were met with a shock of recognition. The map, drawn decades before European explorers had fully charted the New World, shows an eerily accurate outline of the eastern coast of South America. It correctly depicts the bulge of Brazil and the contours of the coastline with a precision that seems to defy its own time. But the true controversy lies farther south. Below the tip of the continent, the map shows a landmass stretching eastward. Piri Reis labeled it, but the interpretation of that landmass has ignited one of the most heated debates in the history of cartography. Some researchers, most notably Professor Charles Hapgood in the mid-20th century, proposed an astonishing theory. They argued that the landmass was not a misplaced South America or a speculative guess, but the actual coastline of Antarctica, shown not as it appears today under miles of ice, but as it might have looked thousands of years ago when its shores were free and exposed. This interpretation hinges on a specific and radical claim that the map depicts the sub-glacial topography of Queen Maud Land with details that match modern seismic surveys. If this is true, the implications are world-shattering. It would mean that a pre-modern, perhaps ancient, seafaring civilization possessed not only the ships to voyage into the frigid Southern Ocean, but the advanced cartographic skill to accurately survey and record a coastline that has been entombed in ice for at least 12,000 years. The source maps Piri Reis cited, now lost to history, would be documents of a geographical knowledge so profound it predates every known civilization. Mainstream scholarship offers compelling counter-arguments. Many cartographers point out that the map contains clear errors and speculative fantasy lands common to its era. They suggest the southern landmass could be a composite of misunderstood sailor reports about Tierra del Fuego, the southern tip of South America, mixed with legendary southern continents that cartographers had hypothesized since the time of Ptolemy. The accuracy of the South American coast, they argue, could have come from Portuguese or other European charts that were secret but circulating in the early 1500s. The debate itself, however, is the true point of technological revolution. The Piri Reis map forces us to confront the fragility of knowledge. It is a physical testament to the fact that our understanding of the world is built on a foundation of documents, most of which have turned to dust. How many other maps, how many other libraries filled with accurate observations were lost to fire, decay, or deliberate destruction? The map does not necessarily prove ancient astronauts or a super civilization. but it does prove something equally profound, that the chain of discovery is not a straight line. It is a network with countless dead ends and forgotten branches. A medieval admiral could sit in Constantinople, piecing together a vision of the world from charts that were already ancient in his time, charts that may have contained echoes of a reality no one in his century could personally verify. The enduring power of the Piri Reis fragment is that it holds up a mirror to our own assumptions. It asks us how much of what we call discovery is actually rediscovery, and how many continents of knowledge still lie buried, not under ice, but under the sheer weight of forgotten time. The silent endurance of a pillar is one thing, but the Romans built to enclose entire heavens. Their most iconic structures, like the Pantheon in Rome, stand not just as ruins, but as fully functioning buildings 2,000 years after their construction. Its dome, a perfect hemisphere of concrete spanning over 43 meters, remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome ever built. For centuries, engineers have marveled at this longevity, especially when compared to modern concrete structures that often show significant decay within decades. The secret was not in magic, but in a recipe, a formula for concrete so advanced that we are only now beginning to understand its genius. Modern Portland cement, the backbone of our global infrastructure, relies on a chemistry that is inherently vulnerable. When seawater seeps into its pores, it triggers destructive chemical reactions that expand and crack the material from within. Roman concrete, however, took a radically different approach. Their key ingredient was a fine volcanic ash called pozzolana, mixed with lime and small stones, but the true masterstroke was their use of the environment itself as a partner, not an enemy. They often mixed this concrete with seawater directly, or built maritime structures like breakwaters that were constantly submerged. For years, this was seen as a curious mistake. We now know it was the core of their technology. When seawater interacts with the pozzolana-rich Roman mixture over time, it slowly promotes the growth of rare, plate-like minerals within the concrete's matrix. These minerals, such as aluminum tobamorite, actually interlock and reinforce the material, filling in micro-cracks and making the concrete grow stronger and more resilient with each passing century. It is a self-healing technology, a material that improves with age. The loss of this knowledge after the empire's decline is one of history's great technological regressions. For over a millennium, builders struggled to replicate the durability of Roman works, their own structures crumbling in comparison. Today, in laboratories around the world, scientists are engaged in a fascinating act of archaeological reverse engineering. They are not just studying ancient concrete, they are trying to decode and resurrect its formula. The goal is to create a new generation of concrete that is not only far more durable, reducing the immense economic and environmental cost of constant repair and replacement, but also one that can actually absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during its curing process. This ancient solution points directly toward a more sustainable future. The Roman concrete revolution is not about finding a stronger rock, it is about a fundamental shift in philosophy. The Romans did not see material science as a fight against nature, but as a collaboration with it. They understood that the most enduring strength comes from designing a material that evolves and adapts within its environment, turning a potential threat like seawater into the very source of its immortality. In their silent, steadfast monuments, they left behind a blueprint for resilience we are only now smart enough to follow. Deep within a temple dedicated to the goddess Hathor, a stone carving has illuminated one of archaeology's most persistent and heated debates. On a wall in the crypts of Dendera, Egypt, a relief from the Ptolemaic or Roman period shows a strange and compelling scene. A large, elongated object, reminiscent of a modern glass bulb, is held aloft by a pillar. Inside it, a snake stretches its body along the length of the object, its head pointed toward one end. A cable or cord seems to connect the base of this bulb to a box, upon which a kneeling figure rests, while a baboon-like god stands guard with knives. To a modern eye, the resemblance is uncanny and immediate. It looks for all the world like a diagram of an electric light bulb, with the serpent representing the glowing filament and the box serving as a power source or battery. This interpretation, known as the Dendera light hypothesis, suggests the ancient Egyptians may have possessed some form of advanced electrical lighting. Proponents point to a practical mystery that has long puzzled Egyptologists. The interiors of many tombs and temples, like the Great Pyramid's chambers, are deep, windowless spaces covered in intricate carvings and paintings. How were these works executed in total darkness? And why is there a notable absence of soot from torches or oil lamps on many of the high ceilings? The idea of a clean, electric light source provides a seductively simple answer. It fits a narrative of a lost, high technology that explains other anomalies, creating a coherent picture of a civilization far more advanced than we credit. The mainstream archaeological explanation, however, is rooted not in engineering but in mythology. Scholars identify the scene as a profound religious symbol. The bulb is interpreted as a giant lotus flower, a sacred symbol of creation and rebirth. The snake emerging from it represents the god Harsomptus, a manifestation of the sun god, being born from the primordial waters of the lotus. The entire tableau is a visual metaphor for the moment of creation, the emergence of light and life from the cosmic darkness. The box is seen as a jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and the baboon is the god Thoth. The connecting cord is not a wire, but a symbolic serpentine tube linking the elements of the myth. This interpretation is supported by countless other reliefs and texts that use similar iconography to tell this exact story, placing the Dendera scene firmly within a well-understood symbolic language. This stark clash of interpretations is where the true technological insight lies. The Dendera relief is not merely a carving, it is a test case for how we see the past. It underscores the immense challenge of interpreting ancient iconography through a modern lens. Our brains are wired to recognize familiar patterns, and in a world lit by electric bulbs, we see a bulb. The ancient artisan's brain, steeped in complex religious symbolism, saw a lotus birthing a solar deity. The debate forces us to ask a critical question: can symbolic art ever encode descriptions of real, lost technology? Is it possible that a culture, having discovered a remarkable phenomenon like a primitive electric arc or a sustained chemical glow, would choose to represent that awe-inspiring discovery through the language of their gods and myths, preserving the concept if not the blueprint? Or does this line of thinking risk reducing the rich, spiritual imagination of an ancient people to a mere user manual for gadgets we wish they had? The Dendera light does not provide easy answers, but it brilliantly illuminates the tension at the heart of all these discoveries. It reminds us that the past speaks in a foreign tongue, and the most revolutionary act is sometimes to listen for the poetry, not just the potential schematics. A script carved in stone can be translated, but what if the language itself is unknown? In the ruins of the ancient Minoan palace at Phaistos on the island of Crete, archaeologists unearthed a simple yet profoundly baffling object. It is a disk of fired clay, roughly the size of a small plate, dating to around 1700 years before the Common Era. On both of its faces, a continuous spiral of tiny, intricate symbols is pressed into the clay. There are 241 symbols in total, made up of 45 distinct repeating signs. Some show the clear shapes of a human head, a walking man, a ship, a bee, or a flowering lily. This is the Phaistos disk, and it is one of the most famous undeciphered objects in the entire world. The mystery is not just what it says, but how it was made. Each symbol was not carved by hand after the disk was formed. Instead, they were stamped into the soft clay using individual, pre-formed seals, a separate punch for each distinct sign. This is the technology of movable type, a method for reproducing written information quickly and consistently. This fact alone sends a shockwave through the history of communication. In Europe, the movable type printing press, credited to Johannes Gutenberg, emerged in the 15th century. The Festos disc demonstrates that the core concept of reproducible writing through stamped symbols was invented, perfected, and then seemingly abandoned in the Bronze Age Aegean, a full 3,000 years before Gutenberg. This was not an evolutionary step toward an alphabet. It was a brilliant, isolated leap. The disk represents a complete, self-contained information technology system. Someone designed a set of standard symbols, crafted the precise stamps, arranged them in a specific, meaningful order along a spiral path, and then pressed them into permanence. But to what end? The spiral itself suggests the message was meant to be read from the outer edge inward toward the center, a journey into the heart of the meaning. Is it a religious hymn, a legal treaty, a story, or an inventory of the palace's treasures? Without a bilingual key or a longer sample of the script, it remains mute. The true revolution of the Festos disc lies in this duality. It is simultaneously a triumph of early engineering ingenuity and a monument to the fragility of knowledge. The Minoans, a vibrant maritime civilization, clearly possessed the organizational mind to develop a system for duplicating text, a tool that could have standardized administration or spread ideas. Yet this powerful technology appears nowhere else. No other stamped clay documents have been found in Crete or beyond. It is as if the disk is a single, surviving prototype from a workshop whose every other invention was lost. This forces a haunting consideration. How many other informational technologies, other ways of encoding thought into durable form, were invented by ancient cultures and then vanished without a trace? The disk is not a failure of decipherment. It is a success of ancient innovation. It proves that the human drive to record, replicate, and communicate complex information can manifest in wildly different forms across the millennia. It stands as a quiet, clay testament to a road not taken in the history of writing, a brilliant path that led into the spiraling silence of a forgotten library, whose only surviving book fits in the palm of your hand. A silent clay disk preserved one forgotten language, but the Norse chose to navigate by reading the light itself. Their legendary voyages across the storm-tossed North Atlantic are a feat of seamanship that has long inspired awe and curiosity. How did they traverse such vast, featureless stretches of open ocean, often under the perpetually gray skies of the northern latitudes, without the compass, which would not reach Europe until centuries later? The answer may lie not in a crafted tool, but in a gift from the earth, mentioned in their sagas as the Solarstein, the Sunstone. These texts describe navigators using a mysterious crystal to locate the sun's position, even when it was hidden behind cloud cover or below the horizon after sunset. For generations, this was dismissed as myth or metaphor. Modern science, however, has revealed it was likely a breathtaking application of natural physics. Researchers hypothesized the sunstone was a transparent crystal of calcite, also known as Iceland spar or perhaps cordierite. These minerals have a unique optical property called birefringence or polarization. When light passes through them, it splits into two separate beams. A skilled navigator could hold such a crystal up to the sky and slowly rotate it. Even on an overcast day, the scattered light in the atmosphere maintains a subtle pattern of polarization centered on the sun's hidden location. By looking through the crystal and turning it until the two beams of light matched in intensity and color, achieving a uniform brightness, the user could pinpoint the sun's azimuth, its direction along the horizon, with remarkable accuracy. This was not magic, it was a sophisticated, hands-on understanding of optics and the natural world. It gave Viking sailors a critical edge, allowing them to maintain their course during the long, sunless weeks of a North Atlantic crossing. This represents a profound category of technology, one that is often overlooked because it leaves no workshop behind, no forged metal or complex gears. It is the technology of deep observation and applied natural science. The Vikings did not invent a new device. They mastered how to use a perfect one that the planet had already provided. They turned a simple crystal into a celestial compass, decoding the hidden messages written in polarized sky light. This insight reframes their entire exploratory enterprise. It shows that their greatest tool was not just the sturdy longship, but a culture of empirical problem solving, a willingness to experiment with the properties of the world around them to conquer distances that must have seemed like the edge of the world itself. The sunstone stands as a perfect symbol for this entire journey through ancient discoveries, a clear crystal through which we see the past not as a series of primitive steps, but as a landscape of brilliant, adaptive flashes of understanding, where the line between the natural world and human ingenuity becomes beautifully and functionally blurred. That mastery of natural forces is one kind of genius, but another lies in the quiet order of a city street. In the plains of the Indus Valley, around 4,500 years ago, a civilization built a metropolis that would not feel out of place in its fundamental design until the modern era. The ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, meaning Mound of the Dead, reveal a city planned not by chance or gradual sprawl, but by a sweeping, deliberate vision. Its technology was not a single object, but a system, a philosophy of communal living etched into baked brick and flowing water. The first clue is underfoot. Across the entire city, from the grand citadel to the smallest dwelling, the bricks are not random sizes. They are standardized with a consistent ratio of length to width to height. This meant any brick from any kiln could fit into any construction project, a principle of mass production and interchangeable parts that would not become commonplace for millennia. This uniformity speaks of a powerful, centralized authority capable of imposing and maintaining technical standards across a vast region. The city itself is laid out on a precise grid plan. Wide, straight main streets run north-south and east-west, intersecting at right angles to create orderly city blocks. Smaller lanes branch off, providing access to residential courtyards. This is not an organic tangle of pathways. It is a master plan designed for efficient movement, drainage, and perhaps even social order. But the true marvel, the element that truly separates Mohenjo-Daro from its contemporaries, is hidden beneath those streets. The city possessed one of the world's earliest and most sophisticated public water and sewage systems. Individual homes often had their own bathing areas and wells. Wastewater was channeled through covered, brick-lined drains that ran along the streets, equipped with inspection holes for maintenance. These drains then fed into larger municipal sewers. This was not a luxury for the elite. It was a civic infrastructure that served the entire community, reflecting a revolutionary understanding of public health. The psychological impact of such an environment would have been profound. Imagine walking those clean, orderly streets, knowing that fresh water was accessible and waste was managed unseen below. It speaks of a society that valued collective well-being, hygiene, and quiet efficiency over monumental displays of royal power. While Egypt was raising pyramids to the sky and Mesopotamia was building towering ziggurats, the Indus Valley civilization was investing its greatest architectural ambition into the ground, into the logic of daily life for thousands of its citizens. This systemic technology of urban engineering forces us to expand our definition of advancement. A pyramid inspires awe, but a functioning sewer system sustains a civilization. The precision of Mohenjo-Daro suggests a social contract, a shared agreement to live by rational rules for the common good. Its legacy is not a list of kings or conquests, but a blueprint for how to build a society that works, a testament to the idea that the highest technology is sometimes the one that creates a healthy, orderly, and dignified life for all its people. Orderly streets and flowing water reveal a society's priorities, but what about a device designed to listen to the very earth groaning? In the year 132 of the Common Era, a brilliant Chinese scholar and inventor named Zhang Heng presented the Han court with a creation that must have seemed like something from mythology. It was a large, ornate bronze jar, perhaps as tall as a man. Encircling its upper section were 8 dragon heads, each gazing outward in a cardinal or intercardinal direction. Below each dragon, with its mouth open in anticipation, sat a bronze frog. This was Zhang Heng's seismoscope, and its purpose was as revolutionary as its design, to detect the direction of a distant earthquake. At a time when such tremors were widely viewed as expressions of celestial displeasure or supernatural omens, this device proposed a radical idea that earthquakes were physical, measurable phenomena that could be understood and tracked. The principle was elegantly simple in concept. Inside the sealed vessel, historical accounts suggest, was a delicately balanced pendulum. When seismic waves from a distant quake reached the capital, the ground's subtle motion would cause the pendulum to swing. This motion would trigger a mechanism, likely a set of levers or channels, that would release a bronze ball from the mouth of the dragon facing the quake's epicenter. The ball would then drop with a loud clang into the waiting frog's mouth below, both announcing the event and pointing the way. The genius of this invention lies in its dual nature. It was a masterpiece of art and statecraft, a magnificent object meant to inspire awe at the emperor's court. Yet beneath that artistry was a profound grasp of physics, an application of basic inertial sensing. The device did not just register a shake, it processed that information to yield a directional output. It transformed an invisible, terrifying force into a clear, actionable signal. While the exact internal mechanics were lost to history, modern engineers attempting reconstructions have confirmed that such a design is not only plausible but functional. Using models with an inverted pendulum or even a simple heavy mass suspended in a liquid, they have created working replicas that successfully indicate direction. This moves the seismoscope from the realm of legend into the catalogue of genuine ancient engineering. Zhang Heng's invention represents a monumental shift in thinking. It marks one of the earliest known attempts to build an instrument for monitoring natural disasters, a technology of early warning and empirical observation. It showcases a culture actively seeking a scientific, rather than solely superstitious, framework for understanding the volatile earth. This was not about appeasing gods, but about gathering data, about turning the mysterious rumble beneath one's feet into a single, falling bronze ball that said, "Look there." It reminds us that the quest to predict the unpredictable, to find order in chaos, is a human impulse as ancient as civilization itself, manifesting not just in myth, but in the precise mechanics of bronze and gravity. A device that listens for earthquakes speaks to a desire for empirical truth, but the human heart is also drawn to objects of pure, captivating mystery. Among the most famous and controversial relics ever presented as evidence of lost ancient technology are the crystal skulls. These are life-sized, often exquisitely detailed carvings made from clear or milky quartz, with the most renowned being the Mitchell-Hedges skull, said to have been discovered in a Mayan ruin in the 1920s. Its surface is flawless, its jawbone separate and perfectly hinged, and it possesses an almost hypnotic optical quality. For decades, these artifacts were promoted as pre-Columbian masterpieces, their existence posed as an impossible question. How could ancient Mesoamerican artisans, without modern tools, have carved and polished solid quartz crystal, one of the hardest materials on Earth, to such a perfect, lifelike finish? The skulls became powerful symbols in popular culture, featured in stories and films as objects of mystical power, conduits to lost knowledge or otherworldly intelligence. They seem to offer tangible proof of a technology so refined it bordered on the magical, a perfect fusion of artistry and super science from a forgotten age. This narrative, however, began to unravel under the cool, objective gaze of modern forensic science, when researchers subjected several of the most famous skulls, including the Mitchell-Hedges specimen, to detailed microscopic analysis. The story took a decisive turn. Under high magnification, the tool marks left on the crystal were not consistent with ancient hand-powered methods using stone, wood, or cord drills. Instead, they showed the unmistakable signature of rotary wheels and polishing compounds developed in the 19th century, equipment used by European and American jewelers. The evidence pointed not to a lost Mayan workshop, but to a much more recent origin, likely crafted in Germany or elsewhere in Europe during the 1800s. The crystal skulls thus represent a different but equally important kind of technological discovery. They are masterpieces of the technology of forgery, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of both material science and human psychology. Their creators possessed the skill to work an incredibly difficult medium, and the insight to craft an object that would tap directly into our deepest fascinations with the enigmatic past. Their enduring appeal is a powerful lesson about the role of mythology and desire in history. We so desperately want the past to hold profound secrets, to contain artifacts that defy our understanding, that we can sometimes overlook the simpler, if less thrilling, truth. The skulls teach historians and the public alike a crucial discipline: the necessity of subjecting extraordinary claims to rigorous, methodical authentication. They remind us that the most compelling narrative is not always the correct one, and that the true technology of uncovering the past lies as much in the careful tools of the laboratory as it does in the romantic thrill of the excavation. The skulls are not portals to Atlantis, but they are mirrors, reflecting back our own timeless longing for a world more mysterious and advanced than the one we know. A crystal skull reflects our longing for mystery, but a Roman cup holds a secret light within its very substance. On display in the British Museum is the Lycurgus Cup, a 4th-century Roman glass cage cup depicting the myth of King Lycurgus entangled by vines. In ordinary daylight, the cup shines with a deep, opaque jade green, but hold a light source behind it, and the entire vessel undergoes a magical transformation. The solid green vanishes, replaced by a glowing, translucent red, as if the glass itself has caught fire from within. This is not a trick of the light, it is a fixed property of the material, a phenomenon known as dichroism. For over 1,500 years, this stunning visual effect was simply a marvel of lost Roman artistry, a beautiful puzzle with no apparent solution. The answer, when it finally came, was found not in historical texts, but at a scale invisible to the human eye. Modern scientists placed a fragment of the cup under an electron microscope, and the ancient glass revealed its astonishing secret. Embedded throughout the material were billions of minuscule particles of gold and silver, each measuring about 50 nanometers across, smaller than a wavelength of light. These are nanoparticles the Roman craftsmen had, entirely through empirical experimentation, created a form of nanotechnology. They achieved this by mixing tiny amounts of gold and silver dust into the molten glass batch. Through a process of repeated heating and cooling, they somehow managed to control the size and dispersion of these metal particles at a molecular level. The physics behind the color change is as brilliant as the craftsmanship. When light strikes the front of the cup, the nanoparticles scatter the green wavelengths, giving the glass its jade hue. But when light passes through from behind, the particles allow red wavelengths to transmit, creating that spectacular ruby glow. The artisans had no concept of nanoparticles or light wavelengths. They were working from a recipe, a tradition of trial and error passed down through generations of glassmakers. They knew that adding a specific, minuscule amount of these precious metals in a specific way produced this miraculous effect. They were manipulating matter at a scale they could not see to produce an artistic vision they could. This places the Lycurgus Cup in a category beyond mere art. It is a functional scientific instrument, a permanent demonstration of a physical principle that would not be formally understood until the development of quantum mechanics in the 20th century. It represents a peak of material science achieved through hands-on mastery rather than theoretical science, a testament to the power of observation and perfected technique. The cup asks us a profound question about the nature of discovery. How many other ancient recipes for dyes, alloys, or ceramics contain similar nanoscale engineering that we have yet to recognize because we never thought to look so closely? It stands as a silent, glowing bridge between the aesthetic intuition of the ancient world and the analytical tools of our own, proving that beauty can be a direct path to a deep, if unspoken, understanding of the universe. The glowing secret of the Lycurgus Cup was hidden within its very structure, a manipulation of matter at a scale too small to see. But what happens when we look at a formation in nature and see a structure so perfect it appears deliberately made? High on the remote slopes of Mount Beigong in China, a collection of strange tubular formations has sparked a modern mystery that echoes the lessons of the Coso artifact. Discovered in the late 1990s, these so-called Beigong pipes are found embedded within solid rock. They appear as straight, hollow tubes of varying diameters, some as wide as a foot across, others no thicker than a toothpick, and they protrude from a rocky cliff face and even extend into a nearby lake. Their appearance is undeniably mechanical. To the untrained eye, they look exactly like rusted, ancient plumbing or ventilation shafts, seemingly welded together from a metallic alloy and left behind by some unknown civilization in the distant past. Local legends and some sensational reports have even suggested they could be evidence of prehistoric industry or something far more speculative, dating them to a time before recorded history. This interpretation taps directly into a powerful and very human cognitive phenomenon known as pareidolia, our brain's innate tendency to perceive familiar patterns, especially faces or manufactured objects within random or natural shapes. We see a man in the moon, a face on Mars, and in the case of the Beigong pipes, we see the gutters and ducts of a forgotten factory. The true investigation, however, begins when pareidolia meets geology. When scientists analyzed samples from the pipes, they found not the refined alloys of an ancient workshop, but a composition primarily of iron oxide, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide. This is the signature of a natural geological process, not a metallurgical one. The leading scientific explanation is that these are fascinating examples of pseudofossils or diagenetic structures. They could be the fossilized remains of ancient tree roots. Over millions of years, as the trees decayed, mineral-rich water percolated through the hollow spaces left behind, depositing layers of iron and other minerals that cemented into a hard, pipe-like cast of the original organic structure. Alternatively, they could be formations created by hydrothermal activity, where mineral-laden fluids were forced through cracks in the rock, gradually building up concentric layers that created tube-like shapes as the softer surrounding stone eroded away. The process is natural, but its product can be astonishingly symmetrical and convincing. The controversy surrounding the Beigong pipes is not really about their origin, which geology explains quite well. The true significance lies in the challenge they represent for the modern study of the past. They are a perfect case study in the ongoing and essential dialogue between discovery and analysis. The initial awe-struck interpretation sees advanced technology. The subsequent meticulous investigation reveals a remarkable but natural artifact. This process is not a dismissal of mystery, but its resolution through a different kind of technology, the advanced analytical tools of geochemistry, microscopy, and radiometric dating. These pipes force archaeologists and enthusiasts alike to practice a crucial discipline, distinguishing between a world-changing anomaly and a masterpiece of natural mimicry. They remind us that the Earth itself is the most prolific and ingenious sculptor, capable of creating forms that perfectly mirror our own inventions. In doing so, they reinforce a vital principle, that the most profound respect we can pay to the ancient past is not to project our own technological fantasies onto it, but to employ every tool at our disposal to listen carefully to the true story the stones are telling. The Earth's own artistry can create convincing illusions of industry, but sometimes the most persistent mysteries are born from stories that feel almost too perfect to be true. In the year 1938, an expedition led by a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te reportedly entered a series of high mountain caves in the remote Bayon-Kara Ula range near the border with Tibet. What they allegedly found inside has since become one of the most famous and contested legends in the realm of alternative history. The story describes the discovery of hundreds of stone discs, each roughly a foot across, with a hole in the center resembling phonograph records. Alongside them were said to be the remains of individuals with unusual skeletal structures, described as small and with oversized skulls. The discs themselves were the true enigma, each reportedly inscribed with a continuous, microscopic spiral of tiny, unknown hieroglyphics. The narrative takes its most dramatic turn years later, when a researcher named Tsum Amnui is said to have finally translated the script. The translation told an astonishing tale of a spacecraft crashing in the mountains millennia ago, and its occupants, a people called the Dropa, struggling to survive in this hostile new world. This account, a story of ancient extraterrestrial contact preserved in stone, captured the global imagination and has been reprinted in books and documentaries for decades. It perfectly encapsulates a specific and powerful desire to find physical, tangible proof that our ancestors were not alone, that advanced beings once walked the earth and perhaps even seeded our own development. The legend of the Dropa stones functions as a kind of cultural technology, a crafted narrative that fills the silent gaps in our prehistory with a story of cosmic intervention. It provides a sweeping, singular answer to the very real question of how certain ancient achievements were possible, bypassing the messy, gradual, and often lost record of human ingenuity. However, when subjected to the same rigorous scrutiny as the crystal skulls or the Bagong pipes, the entire edifice of the Dropa story begins to crumble. No reputable museum or institution has ever displayed or catalogued these discs. The principal figures named in the account, Kai Pu-te and Tsum Amnui, cannot be verified as real scholars in Chinese archaeological records. The few blurry photographs that exist are generally considered to be of known, mundane artifacts like by discs, common ancient Chinese ritual objects. The entire tale appears to be a modern fabrication, possibly originating in a German magazine article in the 1960s that was then retold and embellished across the world. Yet its enduring power is the real point of interest. The Dropa legend did not persist because of its evidence, but because of its emotional and narrative resonance. It speaks to a profound human need to connect our origins to something greater, to solve all ancient mysteries with one grand, elegant theory. This phenomenon itself is a form of modern myth-making, a technology for crafting alternative pasts that feel more exciting or meaningful than the complex, fragmented truth archaeology painstakingly uncovers. It reveals less about ancient China and more about our own contemporary longing, showing how the unknown spaces on our historical maps are often filled not with facts, but with the stories we most wish were true. That longing for a grand, singular answer often overlooks the quieter, more tangible genius right beneath our feet. High above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman presents a mystery not of alien intervention, but of human mastery so profound it defies belief. Its walls are not merely built, they are woven from stone. Enormous blocks of limestone, some weighing over 100 tons, are fitted together in a dizzying, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. Each stone is a unique, irregular polygon with anywhere from 6 to a dozen sides, yet they lock into their neighbors with a seamlessness that seems to deny the laws of physics. The joints are so precise that for centuries, guides have demonstrated their perfection by showing that not even the thin blade of a razor can be inserted between them. This is not an exaggeration for tourists, it is a measurable fact of the masonry. The walls curve and zigzag in great, sawtoothed patterns, rising in terraces that echo the surrounding Andean peaks. The visual effect is one of impossible solidity, as if the very mountain had been persuaded to rearrange itself into a fortress. The first question is the most obvious: how? How did a culture without the wheel, without iron tools, without draft animals achieve this? The quarries for this limestone were located kilometers away across rugged terrain. The transportation alone represents a monumental feat of logistics, likely involving thousands of workers using ropes, rollers, and earthen ramps to inch each colossal block into place. But the quarrying and transport, while staggering, are only the prelude to the true technological marvel, the shaping. The method for cutting these stones to such exacting, custom specifications remains one of archaeology's great puzzles. The Incas used harder stones like diorite to pound and grind the limestone, a process of patient abrasion that could shape the rock over time. But the perfection of the joints suggests something beyond brute force pounding. One compelling theory involves a profound understanding of the stone itself. Researchers suggest the Inca may have used natural plant compounds or mineral slurries applied to specific points on the rock. Certain saps or acidic solutions, when combined with focused sunlight or repeated thermal cycles from heating and cooling, could have slightly softened the stone's surface, making it more workable for the final, precise finishing. This would not be melting the rock, but temporarily altering its microstructure to allow for that final, flawless fit. The result of this entire process is a structure of breathtaking resilience. The interlocking polygonal design is a masterpiece of seismic engineering. When an earthquake strikes, the stones in a straight, mortared wall would tend to sway and collapse as a single unit. But at Sacsayhuaman, the complex shapes and lack of mortar allow the wall to flex. The stones shift and settle against each other, dissipating the energy of the tremor throughout the entire structure, before settling back into their original, locked position when the shaking stops. They dance rather than break. This is not accidental, it is intelligent design born from living in one of the most geologically active regions on the planet. The fortress, therefore, represents a pinnacle of integrated knowledge. It combines civil engineering, material science, logistics, and a deep, respectful collaboration with the landscape. The Incas did not seek to conquer the mountain with their walls. They sought to emulate its eternal, interconnected strength. Sacsayhuaman asks us to redefine sophistication, away from the gears and lenses of the old world, and toward a monumental, grounded intellect that could make stone flow like water and lock together like a single, unbreakable thought. A fortress of stone speaks of a civilization rooted in its mountains, but a small bell found on the opposite side of the world tells a story of winds, currents, and unexpected meetings. In 1836, a missionary named William Colenso was traveling through the dense forests of the North Island of New Zealand when he came across a most peculiar object. The Maori people he was with were using it as a pot for cooking potatoes. It was a small, hand-sized bell cast from a dark bronze alloy. What made it extraordinary was not its shape but the markings upon it. When cleaned, clear inscriptions were revealed, and they were written in Tamil, a classical language of southern India. For a humble cooking pot in a remote New Zealand forest, this was an identity that made no sense at all. This was the Tamil bell, and it became a quiet, persistent question mark in the history of human movement. The immediate assumption might be that it arrived with European colonists. After all, the British East India Company had extensive operations in India, and their ships certainly sailed the Pacific. A sailor could have lost a personal keepsake, or it could have been traded along a long chain of ports. This is the simplest explanation, and it keeps the traditional historical map intact, with European vessels as the first to connect these distant dots. But the bell itself refuses to settle the debate so easily. Its style and the specific form of its Tamil script have been analyzed for clues. Some scholars argue the script appears older, possibly dating to a period between the 1400s and 1600s, a time before sustained European presence in the region. This opens a door to a far more revolutionary possibility. What if the bell arrived not on a European ship, but on a Polynesian voyaging canoe or even an Indian trading vessel, centuries before Captain Cook ever mapped the coastline? The technological implication here is not of a single artifact, but of a network. It speaks to the potential of transoceanic voyaging technology that was far more advanced and far-reaching than our textbooks have allowed. We know the Polynesians were the greatest navigators in human history, using the stars, waves, and bird migrations to settle islands across thousands of miles of open Pacific. Could their double-hulled canoes, capable of carrying families and supplies for months, have made contact with traders from the Indian Ocean world? Alternatively, could Indian ships, riding the monsoon winds across the Bay of Bengal and beyond, have ventured further east than any record shows? The bell is a tiny, bronze witness to a connection that our written histories have missed. It represents the quiet technology of cultural exchange itself, where a simple traded good becomes a seed of evidence for a relationship that challenges every model of isolated civilizational development. This object asks us to reconsider the oceans not as barriers, but as highways crisscrossed by many peoples across many eras. It suggests that our map of the ancient world is still missing countless threads of contact, threads that occasionally surface in the most unexpected places, like a bell being used to cook a meal in a forest on the other side of the globe. The silent, sootless walls of Egypt's deepest tombs pose a question that light itself cannot answer. How were these intricate murals painted and the massive stone blocks precisely set in chambers where daylight never reached, and the air would have been choked by smoke from torches or oil lamps? For some, this practical puzzle points toward a tantalizing and controversial possibility that the ancient Egyptians might have possessed and used a form of electric lighting, a technology hinted at by more than just the debated Dendera relief. This speculation extends beyond a single carving to encompass an entire environmental anomaly found in places like the interior chambers of the Great Pyramid or the elaborate tombs in the Valley of the Kings. In many of these sealed spaces, archaeologists note a remarkable absence of carbon soot residue on the high ceilings and walls, which you would absolutely expect to find if flaming torches had been the primary light source for the workers and artists. This clean stone, combined with the sheer logistical challenge of working in profound darkness, has led researchers like engineer Christopher Dunn and others to propose a radical alternative. They suggest the Egyptians could have utilized a form of the Baghdad battery technology or something similar to power arc lamps or some other form of primitive electric light. The theory imagines craftsmen using copper and iron electrodes in an electrolyte solution, perhaps even with a Leyden jar-like capacitor, to produce a bright, steady, and smokeless glow. It is a compelling narrative that solves the practical problem with an elegant, modern-seeming solution. It speaks to our desire to see a continuous thread of advanced knowledge, linking the chemical batteries of Mesopotamia to the architectural wonders along the Nile. Mainstream Egyptology and archaeology, however, remain firmly unconvinced, and for a critical reason that goes to the heart of all historical inquiry. They point out that while the environmental observation about soot is valid in some locations, evidence of torches and oil lamps has indeed been found in many others. More importantly, they argue there is a complete absence of the physical evidence you would need to support the electrical hypothesis. No wires, no insulated cables, no obvious sockets or lamp holders, and no depictions of such devices being used in any realistic, non-symbolic context in the thousands of tomb paintings that document daily life. The beautiful hieroglyphs show us everything from baking bread to building boats, but never the plugging in of a light. This creates a fascinating intellectual standoff between technological capability and archaeological proof. On one hand, the principle was demonstrably within reach, the components were available, and the need was certainly present. They could have done it. On the other hand, not a single shred of direct, unambiguous evidence has been found to show that they actually did. This distinction is everything. Rethinking history requires more than just identifying a gap in our understanding and proposing an ingenious fill. It requires that the new idea leave traces in the record that can be found, analyzed, and corroborated. The persistent speculation about Egyptian electricity, therefore, serves a deeper purpose than proving a theory. It masterfully illustrates the rigorous rules of the historical detective game. It shows that every claim must be weighed against the silent testimony of the site itself. A missing piece of soot is intriguing, but it is not a battery, it is not a wire, and it is not a lamp. The true lesson here is about the nature of evidence itself. We must be careful not to mistake an absence of one technology, like soot, as positive proof for the presence of another, like electricity. The clean walls of the tombs remind us that our ancestors were endlessly resourceful, and their solutions, whether simple or sophisticated, may have left footprints we have not yet learned to recognize. The mystery of the dark chambers endures not as proof of lost science, but as a permanent invitation to look harder, think deeper, and always distinguish between what was possible and what can be proven. The clean walls of a tomb ask how a task was done, but a field of golden grain asks a far deeper question. How did we learn to shape life itself? Our 25th discovery is not an object you can hold, but a process you can eat. It is the ancient technology of domestication, a slow, deliberate, and breathtakingly sophisticated form of biological engineering. Long before we understood genes or DNA, our ancestors were master geneticists, conducting continent-spanning experiments that lasted hundreds of human lifetimes. They looked at a wild, scraggly grass called teosinte, with its handful of hard seeds encased in a rock-like shell, and saw potential. Over generations, they selectively saved and planted the seeds from plants with slightly larger kernels, or those whose casings were a bit less tough. Each planting was a choice, a vote for a desired trait. The cumulative effect of these countless, patient decisions across millennia transformed teosinte into maize, a plant whose cob is packed with soft, nourishing kernels that cling to a central core, utterly dependent on human hands for its survival. This was not an accident of nature, it was a directed, conscious project. The same profound patience was applied to animals. The global transformation of the wolf into the dog is perhaps the most intimate technological partnership in history. Early humans did not just tame wolves, they began a collaborative breeding program, favoring individuals that were less fearful, more cooperative, or better at specific tasks like herding or guarding. Over time, this selective pressure sculpted not just behavior but physiology, leading to the incredible diversity of shapes, sizes, and temperaments we see in dogs today. This process represents a technology of staggering scale and foresight. It required not just observation, but the ability to envision a future outcome that no single person would live to see. Knowledge had to be transmitted across generations, a grandmother teaching a grandchild which seeds to save, which pups to keep. The technology was the tradition itself, a living protocol passed down through story and practice. This slow biological engineering reshaped the world more fundamentally than any single tool. It allowed nomadic bands to settle, creating the agricultural surplus that made cities, writing, and specialized labor possible. It redesigned entire landscapes, turning forests into farmland and creating new ecological niches. When we marvel at ancient gears or concrete, we must also pause to consider the humble ear of corn or the loyal dog at our feet. These are not just products of nature, but of a forgotten science that worked in harmony with it, a testament to a different kind of intellect, one that thought in seasons and generations, and whose most enduring invention was a partnership with the living world. The quiet, patient art of shaping life stands in stark contrast to a monument that was meant to be seen, felt, and feared. Deep in the humid lowlands of ancient Mexico, the Olmec civilization left behind a legacy not in written words but in faces of stone. These are the colossal heads, 17 known sculptures carved from single, gargantuan blocks of volcanic basalt. Each one is a portrait, a distinct individual with a unique expression, wearing what appears to be a tight-fitting helmet. They are not gods or monsters, but seemingly specific people, their features captured with a realism that feels startlingly human across 3,000 years. Their size, however, is anything but human. The largest stand over 3 meters tall and weigh an almost unimaginable 50 tons, the equivalent of a full-sized school bus carved from solid rock. The first and most immediate question is not why, but how. How do you move a 50-ton block of stone from a quarry in the Tuxtla Mountains, across nearly 100 kilometers of swampy jungle, rivers, and uneven terrain, to a ceremonial center like San Lorenzo? The Olmec had no wheels, no metal tools harder than the stone itself, and no domesticated animals like oxen or horses to provide pulling power. Their technology was not in machines but in minds and muscles. The solution was a breathtaking feat of social engineering and applied physics. Researchers believe they likely used a combination of log rollers, earthen ramps, and immense rope cables made from local fibers. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of workers would have coordinated to inch each colossal head along its journey, using levers to adjust its course and constantly moving the wooden rollers from the back to the front. This was a slow, rhythmic dance of communal effort, a project that could have taken months for a single head. It required a society with a commanding central authority capable of organizing and sustaining such a vast labor force, feeding them and housing them for the duration. This logistical triumph reveals a technology of human coordination as sophisticated as any gear mechanism. But the artistry is equally profound. Using only stone tools, Olmec craftsmen transformed these monstrous basalt boulders into sensitive portraits. They pecked and ground the rock, shaping broad noses, full lips, and eyes that seemed to hold a watchful, knowing gaze. The helmets themselves are detailed with intricate bands and emblems, possibly signifying rank or a ceremonial role. This is where the stone truly becomes a technology of power. Placing these immense, permanent faces in the central plazas of their cities was a deliberate act of political communication. They were a constant, physical reminder of authority, an assertion that the ruler depicted was as enduring and unshakable as the stone itself. They blended the awe of sheer scale with the intimacy of portraiture, creating a bond between the leader and the landscape. The heads force us to expand our definition of engineering once more. Here, the most advanced technology was the social contract that could mobilize a civilization, the geometric understanding that could plot a course through a swamp, and the artistic vision that could turn a mountain's heart into a human face. They are not just sculptures, they are the solidified will of a culture, proving that the greatest monuments are often those that master both the earth and the people who move upon it. The colossal heads of the Olmec speak to a technology of awe, a public display of power meant to dominate the landscape and the human spirit. But in the shadowy, claustrophobic darkness of a tunnel, another kind of ancient technology reveals itself, one designed not to inspire loyalty, but to induce pure, helpless terror. In the sands of eastern Syria lie the ruins of Dura-Europos, a fortress city on the frontier of the Roman and Persian empires. In the year 256 of the Common Era, it became the site of a brutal siege as Sasanian Persian forces sought to breach its walls. Archaeologists excavating the site made a grim and startling discovery that changed our understanding of ancient combat. Beneath the city's ramparts, they found the remains of a countermine tunnel dug by Roman defenders to intercept a Persian siege tunnel. Inside, they uncovered the poignant evidence of a final, desperate confrontation. There were the remains of 20 Roman soldiers, their armor and weapons still with them, piled together in a chaotic heap. They had not fallen to swords or arrows. The position of their bodies and the context of the tunnel told a different story. Scattered around them were the key components of a primitive but horrifyingly effective weapon. The Persians had stacked bricks of bitumen, a thick, tar-like substance, and chunks of yellow sulfur crystals at the entrance to the Roman tunnel. Then they set it all on fire. As the materials burned, they would have produced a thick, choking cloud of toxic fumes, a dense mixture of sulfur dioxide and other poisonous gases. In the enclosed, oxygen-poor space of the tunnel, this cloud would have been a death sentence. The Roman soldiers, trapped in the dark with no avenue of escape, would have been overcome in moments, succumbing to the poisonous air. This was not a lucky accident of combustion. The choice of materials was deliberate and clever. Bitumen and sulfur were readily available in the region, used in everyday construction and rituals. The Persian sappers understood their properties well enough to weaponize them, creating an early and devastating form of chemical warfare. The technology here is one of brutal adaptation, taking common substances and reimagining their purpose in the most dire of circumstances. It was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one, designed to clear a fortified space not with brute force, but with an invisible, unstoppable agent that turned the very air into a weapon. This discovery at Dura-Europos forces a significant expansion of what we consider ancient military technology. We often focus on the tangible, the swords, the catapults, the towering siege towers. But this event reveals a sophisticated, albeit horrific, understanding of environmental combat. It shows that innovation in the ancient world was not always about building a better machine. Sometimes it was about understanding chemistry well enough to turn a tunnel into a gas chamber. This grim chapter underscores a recurring theme, that the drive to solve an immediate, lethal problem, whether defending a city or breaching a wall, could accelerate technological thinking into dark and inventive new realms, proving once more that the ancient mind was capable of strategic cunning that feels unsettlingly modern in its ruthless efficiency. A tunnel filled with poison gas reveals a chilling ingenuity, but the same principles of air and pressure could also create breathtaking beauty. In the vibrant intellectual heart of the ancient world, the Library of Alexandria, an engineer named Ctesibios turned his genius toward a different kind of spectacle. Living in the 3rd century before the Common Era, he is celebrated for inventions that harnessed the fundamental forces of water and air, not for destruction, but for the elevation of human experience. His most famous creation was the hydraules, the world's first pipe organ powered by water pressure, but historical whispers suggest his curiosity did not stop there. Some accounts point to Ctesibios experimenting with instruments driven by the wind itself, perhaps an early ancestor of the wind organ. While the precise details of these wind-powered designs are lost to time, their mere possibility opens a profound window into the ancient mind. Here was a thinker who saw the same pneumatic principles that could pump water or weaponize flame and asked a radically different question: could they also make music? This shift in purpose is a quiet revolution. For generations, we have framed ancient advanced technology through a very specific lens: the monumental, the practical, or the martial. We point to the aqueduct, the siege engine, the astronomical calculator. These are technologies of survival, dominion, or cosmic understanding. Ctesibios represents something else entirely, a lineage of engineering dedicated to art and communal joy. Imagine the scene in a great hall or a public square in Alexandria. The hydraulics would not have been a quiet instrument. By using a regulated column of water to maintain constant air pressure in a chamber, it allowed a musician to play multiple pipes simultaneously with consistent, powerful sound. It could produce a volume and sustained tone impossible for any string or wind instrument of the era. This was not background music, it was an event, a technological marvel that was also a cultural one. The air, carefully controlled by valves and pumps, was transformed into a complex, resonant voice that could fill a space with harmonic grandeur during a religious ceremony, a theatrical performance, or a civic celebration. The work of Ctesibios forces us to expand our definition of technological progress once more. It argues that a civilization's sophistication cannot be measured solely by its weapons or its infrastructure. True advancement is also reflected in what a society builds for pure, shared delight, for the enrichment of the spirit and the senses. The engineering that went into a hydraulic organ was no less intricate than that of a catapult, but its intent was to create awe through harmony, not fear. This holistic view of engineering, one that served the full spectrum of human need from the practical to the aesthetic, suggests a culture that valued the quality of life as much as the means of sustaining it. The legacy of Ctesibios, therefore, is not just in a clever machine. It is in the enduring idea that the highest purpose of human ingenuity can sometimes be to orchestrate the very air into something that stirs the heart, reminding us that in the hum of an ancient pipe, we can hear the sound of a civilization that understood technology as an art form in itself. Beneath the clear, blue waves off the western tip of Japan, the ocean floor holds a secret that refuses to be easily categorized. In 1986, a local diver exploring the waters near Yonaguni Island encountered something that did not belong to the familiar, flowing world of reefs and sand. Rising from the seabed was a colossal formation of sandstone, a monolith the size of a pyramid, but its surfaces were unnaturally flat, meeting at sharp, clean angles. There were what looked like wide, shallow steps leading to a broad platform, straight terraces that dropped in perfect tiers, and narrow channels that cut through the rock with geometric precision. This was the Yonaguni Monument, and from the moment it was photographed, it ignited a firestorm of debate that continues to this very day. The central question is deceptively simple: is this a masterpiece of nature or a monument of human hands? Mainstream geologists, led by experts like Professor Masaki Kimura, who has studied the site extensively, point to the powerful forces of nature. The rock is a sedimentary sandstone, prone to fracturing along natural plains as it erodes. The strong currents in the area could carve and smooth these fractures over millennia, creating flat surfaces and step-like formations through a purely natural process known as sheet jointing. They argue that what we perceive as right angles and platforms are a classic case of pareidolia, our brain imposing order on a random, if spectacular, geological formation. The entire structure, they say, is a beautiful accident of underwater erosion. Yet, for other researchers and archaeologists, the sheer accumulation of seemingly artificial features is too compelling to dismiss. They point to specific elements that appear to defy simple geology. There are two tall, pillar-like stones that look as if they are supporting a massive overhead ledge. There are circular depressions that resemble post holes, and a distinct humanoid face carved into one wall. Most strikingly, there is a long, straight pathway that runs along the base of the monument like a processional road. If even a fraction of these features were intentionally crafted, the implications are staggering. The monument sits in about 85 feet of water. Sea level studies show that this area would have been above dry land, potentially part of a coastal plain, until roughly 10,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. If human hands worked this stone, they did so in a prehistoric era for which we have almost no evidence of large-scale stoneworking, let alone the ability to shape bedrock on such a monumental scale. This places Yonaguni at the razor's edge of a profound historical mystery. It forces a direct confrontation between two ways of seeing the world. One view relies on the well-documented, slow artistry of geological processes. The other is willing to consider a lost chapter of human prehistory, where a culture now submerged by rising seas possessed the skill and vision to alter the very bones of the earth. The monument does not offer a verdict. Instead, it presents a permanent underwater riddle, a test of our own interpretive limits. It asks us whether our current timeline of human technological development is complete, or if the rising oceans at the dawn of our history did not just change coastlines, but also drown the evidence of civilizations whose footprints we are only now beginning to glimpse beneath the waves. The silent, submerged riddle of Yonaguni asks us to consider what was lost when the seas rose, but on the windswept plains of northern Europe, other ancient builders left a message in stone that the rising waters could not erase. Stonehenge and the Great Mound of Newgrange are far more than ritual sites or burial grounds. They are colossal stone calendars, sophisticated astronomical observatories constructed over 5,000 years ago with a precision that still commands respect. Their technology was not forged from metal or powered by levers, but carved from millennia of patient observation and encoded into the very alignment of the earth and sky. At Stonehenge, the famous sarsen stones form a silent circle that speaks a specific celestial language. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, and its first rays shine straight into the heart of the monument. In the depths of winter, during the winter solstice, the setting sun aligns perfectly with another axis framed by the great trilithons. This was not a lucky accident. It required generations of sky watchers to track the sun's slow, yearly migration, marking its northernmost and southernmost points on the horizon. That hard-won data then had to be translated into a construction plan of staggering ambition. The builders had to source, shape, and transport multi-ton bluestones from mountains over 150 miles away, then erect them with such exacting placement that the alignments would remain true for centuries. This was a societal endeavor of epic scale, a mobilization of knowledge, labor, and faith that turned an abstract understanding of time into a permanent, physical fact. Across the Irish Sea, the passage tomb of Newgrange demonstrates a different but equally brilliant application of this astronomical knowledge. This massive, grass-covered mound, older than the pyramids of Giza, contains a long, narrow passage leading to a central chamber. Above the entrance is a unique feature called a roof box, a small, carefully engineered window of stone. For just a few minutes at dawn around the winter solstice, when the sun is at its lowest and weakest point in the sky, a narrow beam of sunlight passes through this roof box. It travels down the dark passageway, growing wider as it goes, until it floods the inner chamber with a dramatic, golden light, illuminating carvings and the resting places within. This event lasts only briefly before the light retreats, plunging the chamber back into darkness for another year. The precision required to achieve this is breathtaking. The builders had to calculate the exact angle of the midwinter sunrise, then construct a 60-foot-long stone corridor that would capture that single, specific ray at the perfect moment. The roof box itself is a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering, with its sliding stone slab that could perhaps be used to fine-tune or even seal the aperture. This represents a profound form of technology, a knowledge technology. It is the process of capturing an abstract, cyclical truth, the rhythm of the seasons, and monumentalizing it in architecture. For early agricultural societies, this was not merely science. It was survival and spirituality intertwined. Knowing precisely when the sun would begin its return, signaling the end of winter and the promise of spring planting, was vital information. By building these cosmic clocks from stone, they made that knowledge permanent, communal, and sacred. The light-piercing Newgrange's darkness or framing Stonehenge's pillars was a reaffirmation of cosmic order, a demonstration that even in the deepest cold, the cycle would turn. These structures tell us that our ancestors were not just reacting to their environment, they were actively seeking to understand its deepest patterns, and they possessed the collective will and technical skill to build those patterns into the landscape itself, creating a dialogue between heaven and earth that still whispers to us across 50 centuries. Taken together, these 30 discoveries form a mosaic far more intricate than any single legend of a lost Atlantis. They do not point to a lone, forgotten super-civilization that held all the answers, but to something perhaps more profound and more human. Our ancient past was not a steady, upward climb on a single ladder of progress. It was a vast and varied landscape, dotted with isolated peaks of extraordinary ingenuity. A society might perfect the art of moving 50-ton stones, while another, centuries earlier, mastered the chemistry of nanoparticles in glass. One culture invested its genius in urban plumbing, while its neighbor turned a crystal into a celestial compass. These were flashes of brilliance, often intensely focused on solving the specific problems and expressing the unique values of their time and place. The Antikythera Mechanism was a Greek answer to modeling cosmic order, just as the Nazca lines were a Peruvian testament to faith and astronomy etched into the desert. This is the core revelation: innovation is not linear. It does not follow a neat, predetermined path. It is cultural, contextual, and astonishingly diverse. A technology can rise to breathtaking heights, be forgotten for 1,000 years, and then be independently reinvented in a completely different form on another continent. The movable type of the Phaistos disc vanished without a trace, only to re-emerge millennia later in Gutenberg's workshop. The self-healing concrete of Rome was lost, and we spent centuries trying to match its durability. This pattern of loss and rediscovery forces a fundamental humility upon how we view history. We cannot assume that our current technological trajectory is the only one, or even the most advanced in every domain. The Damascus swordsmiths achieved nanoscale engineering without ever writing down the theory, and the builders of Sacsayhuamon devised seismic-proof architecture through an intimate, hands-on dialogue with stone. Their brilliance was in their practiced craft, a kind of knowledge that lives in the hands and the eyes, often dying with the last master who held it. Looking at this collective evidence compels historians to adopt a truly global perspective. Genius was not the exclusive property of any one river valley or empire. It sparked wherever human curiosity met a pressing need, from the icy waters of the North Atlantic to the humid jungles of Costa Rica. Our ancestors in every corner of the world were brilliant, adaptive problem solvers. The full scope of their technological repertoire remains a puzzle we are still assembling, piece by fragile piece, from the gears, the scripts, the alloys, and the aligned stones they left behind. Each discovery is not an end point, but a new beginning for a far richer, more mysterious, and more awe-inspiring story of who we are and what we have always been capable of creating. These 30 fragments of genius form a single, undeniable truth. Our past was not a slow march from darkness, but a brilliant, scattered constellation of light. From the intricate gears of the Antikythera mechanism to the glowing nanoparticles in a Roman cup, each discovery is a quiet rebellion against the notion of a primitive ancient world. They are monuments not to a single forgotten civilization, but to the universal spark of human curiosity, a creativity that could express itself in polished granite spheres, in the polarized light of a sunstone, or in the self-healing chemistry of Roman concrete. These artifacts force us to abandon the comfortable, straight line of progress. History is not a simple ladder we all climb together. It is a vast, overgrown garden where towering achievements could rise in isolation, be forgotten for centuries, and then bloom again in a completely different form halfway across the globe. The movable type of the Phaistos disc vanished into silence, only to be reinvented millennia later. The corrosion-defying recipe of the Delhi pillar was lost, leaving us to wonder at its endurance. This pattern of loss and rediscovery is not a failure of our ancestors, but a profound lesson in humility for us. It tells us that our current technological path is not the only one that ever was or ever could be. The true narrative of human innovation is one of breathtaking diversity and context. A society might pour its collective genius into the perfect urban planning of Mohenjo-Daro, while another dedicated centuries to mastering the astronomy necessary to align a stone circle with the solstice sun. One culture developed nanoscale engineering at the forge, another in the glassmaker's kiln. There is no single definition of advancement, only countless expressions of a mind solving the problems and celebrating the wonders of its own unique world. This means history is far from a solved puzzle. It is an ongoing excavation, a conversation with the past where every shovel strike or scan of the seabed can unveil a new piece that forces us to redraw the entire map. The stories we tell about where we came from are provisional, always awaiting the next fragment of evidence, so we leave you with this invitation. Which of these discoveries shifted your perspective the most? Was it the mathematical precision of the Nazca lines, the cryptic beauty of the Voynich manuscript, or the humble, world-changing patience of the first farmers who shaped wild grass into corn? Share your thoughts below, and if this journey into the mysteries of early technology captivated you, subscribe for more explorations that challenge what we think we know. The next great discovery, the one that will force historians to rethink everything once again, is likely waiting. It could be resting at the bottom of the sea, buried under centuries of silt, or sitting in a museum case, its true secret still unseen. All it needs is for someone to look at the familiar world and dare to ask a new